In the previous video, we went ahead and actually set up Python 3 on this computer. It's now time to actually have a quick look at idle. Now, when developing software in literally any programming language, having an IDE, which stands for Integrated Development Environment, makes life a heck of a lot easier because it allows you to enter, compile, and run your programs without having to leave the editor and run the compiler and then execute your program, which you'd normally have to do. So you can actually avoid using the command line for a lot of programming. So Python provides a very simple IDE called idle, and we installed that in the previous video. And incidentally, the actual name idle was a homage to Eric Idle, who's actually one of the members of the comedy group Monty Python. And idle enables or interfaces directly with the Python interpreter. Now, for a number of reasons that will become apparent as we progress through the course, we actually suggest you actually use IntelliJ IDEA instead for your editing. And in the next video, I'll be showing you how to go about installing that. But with that said, if you'd like to stick with idle for any reason, or if you have to access idle, it can occasionally be useful to use. So this video, we're just going to go through and show you some of the basics. So I'm going to assume that you've installed it as per the last video. And we can either now access it here by clicking that, or I can actually just type idle 3, which you saw me type in the previous video. So I'm actually going to do that. I'm going to close down the command line and actually click on this now, idle 3. And that loads up this little interface, which I'll just center a little bit, and I'll just zoom in a little bit so you can see it a little bit better. So basically, once you're now running idle, or once idle is running, anything you type will be passed to the Python interpreter, and the results will be returned and displayed on the screen. Now, ordinarily in a program, you'd need to use the print statement to actually display a result, and you'll learn more about that in future videos, but you don't actually need to do that in the idle shell. So for example, we could type 2 plus 4 and press enter, and you can see we immediately got the answer 6 in blue there. So what happened there was when we typed that command in, those commands, in this case the 2 plus 4, the expression was actually passed to Python, and Python came back and delivered the result of 6. Now I'm going to actually type in some code here. Now don't worry too much about what this code means. You don't need to understand it. This is just showing you how idle works. In later videos, you'll be learning the syntax of Python and how to actually type your own programs. But for now, type for I in range, and 10 in brackets. I'm going to press a colon, press enter. And notice when I press enter, that idle automatically indented the cursor to be positioned just under the I. And you find more about positioning and indentation, and it's extremely important in Python, and you'll be learning how to do that in the course. But for now, basically what that is saying is for each element of I, we're going to print out the number. I'm going to press enter now, press backspace, and now if I press return or enter on my keyboard, I can actually get the output. And you can see we got the output 0 through 9, so it actually processed it through 10 times. And again, don't worry too much about understanding the code. You don't need to understand the code at this stage. So you can see that idle has got some basic capabilities to actually run some Python programs. Now, if we actually wanted to edit that line for any reason, let's just say we wanted to make the number 10, 11, we need to actually use our cursor keys to go up to the relevant line. So if it's this line, and then we press enter, and you'll see what's happened there is that idle has actually put the command in again, and we can actually change the command. I won't, but we could have changed it. Press enter, backspace, and then press enter again. We can actually execute and run the code again. So that's one way of executing, and it can be useful if you just want to quickly check out some code and run some code quickly. The idle 3 IDE could be useful for that. The other thing we can do, we can actually create a separate file. So we can go into the file menu, click on new file, and we can actually type in, I'll just center this a little bit. I'll try and center that on the screen now. And I'm going to type in a Python command to print out the hello world, or print out hello world. So I'm going to type print hello world. Then what we can do from there is we can actually run it. So we're still actually in idle, but we've just opened up a different window. So I can click on run, and I can click on run module. But when I get that, or when I go to run it, it comes up and says you need to save the source file first. So we need to actually save this file before we can run it. So I'm going to click on OK. And it wants to know where we're going to save it. So I'm just going to save it to the desktop. And it wants the file name, and we'll just call it hello world. And I'm going to click on save. And notice that the file was saved. You can see it up here now on my desktop. But notice also it actually came up with this restart, and it actually showed the results, hello world. So it actually executed the program, in other words. So that's how you go about creating your programs. But again, we don't recommend you actually use that. There's in the next video, we're going to show you how to download and get access to IntelliJ IDEA, which is incredibly powerful. It's got so many more features than Idle, and it just really makes your life a lot easier when programming. Some of the things you can actually do is well, it actually does code checking as you type. So literally as you're typing, it's checking your code and it's flagging errors, and it puts a marker in the right-hand margin. It even goes as far as to suggest improvements to both the style of your code and the content. And that is obviously very useful, incredibly useful, in fact, especially when you're starting out learning Python for the first time. It's got auto completion, which works across the various Python libraries, and that provides rapid selection of the methods or functions, and as well as hints on the syntax to actually use. So idle itself only copes with the really core functionality. So IntelliJ takes it to the next level. You've got lots of other features. You've got auto indenting. You can actually edit XML and text files directly as well, which can be really useful. It's got refactoring tools built in. It's got a Python debugger and lots of other things, even support for Django and Google App Engine projects. And it even actually supports other languages other than Python, like, for example, Java. So there's many other reasons why, but we strongly suggest you actually use IntelliJ IDEA, and you'll see in the next video how to go about installing that. So just before we finish off, I'm going to show you now a two-liner, 2 lines of code, which can be really useful to type to let you check the working directory. And this is actually useful when it comes back to file IO, which you'll be learning about later in the course. So I'm going to type in import OS. So we're importing a core set of functionality relating to the operating system. Now, if I now type os.get cwd, current working directory, and put that in brackets, press enter, you can see it actually comes back and gives us the current directory. And on Linux, it's home/tim/desktop on this computer. So that's it. That's our brief tour of idle. We won't be using that anymore in the course. We'll be moving over to IntelliJ IDEA, and I'll be showing you how to do that, installation and setup of that in the next video.